Welcome to the show. My name's Luke, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Cheyenne Hall. Cheyenne, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very excited to have you on the show. We've had you on the show before, but that was before we were doing video. So this is the first video show we've been able to do with you, which is super exciting. But it's also exciting because you're the first person in MMA fighters I've ever interviewed who fought intentionally on their birthday, and you took an MMA fight on your birthday. So let's jump into that. When did you say yes it is? How did you set up an MMA fight on your birthday?
On accident. I feel like that's happened a couple times. I fought 2 years ago, like 2 days after my birthday on the cowboy fight card.
Okay.
And I don't know why I choose to do this every time, but I had a fight scheduled in December in Duluth, Minnesota.
Mhm.
That one got canceled, just like everything else in 2020. And so I was just looking for something else, and Premier had something set up for the end of January, and it just happened to be on my birthday, which was a Saturday. So the guy was like, "You want to fight on your birthday?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I don't really know what else I'm going to do." So listen, I got one of those bad birthday times anyways, though. Like, you can't go rent out the pool on your birthday.
No.
No, you can't do nothing. It always snows that time too, usually. Didn't this year.
Now, I've known people, to get sidetracked for a second, I've known people who've had winter birthdays and they celebrate their half birthday to get it in the summer.
I'm going to do. That's what I've talked about starting to do, because
Mhm.
that's way smarter. Yeah, you get
Yeah,
sunshine.
there
I
you go.
remember being like a little kid, and that's my dog. I remember being a little kid, and people couldn't come to my birthday party unless their dad had 4-wheel drive. It was the worst.
That is that is great. That's hilarious. I'm an identical twin, so every birthday I've spent was stolen from me by my twin brother. I'm saying that as a joke, of course. We love each other, but we never really. We always kind of had to share the day, because that's what being a twin is. So I don't really have a lot of cool, fun birthday stories. Although being a twin with him is incredible. But anyhow, so you took this fight. Now jumping back to the Minnesota card. How many cards or fights have been canceled because of COVID that you've been at least on or interested in? Because obviously this has been the last year or so that we've been dealing with this.
Um, 4, I think.
Yeah.
4 if I'm counting the one from March that got
Okay.
canceled. But I didn't end up waiting for that one, so it was fine. But I remember Ryan was gonna find me somebody at like 135 or something.
Yeah.
If I would have waited at 135 and not got to fight, I'd have been so
Yeah,
sad.
you would have really upset. Yeah, that's kind of the year that it's been. Is obviously I do commentary for Ryan Middleton's 247 Fighting Championship, and that card got canceled the day of in March, and then that really just started the whole pandemic response. And before this fight, that was on Saturday on your birthday, your last actual MMA fight was for Ryan, July of 2019. And so we'll go first to how did the fight go Saturday? We'll walk through that, and then we'll talk a little bit about your progression as a fighter.
I got my first TKO. That was pretty cool. It was in the first round, so that was fun. Yeah, and I liked fighting in Kentucky. That's the first time I've ever fought there. So they've got some good rules. They allow head kicks and stuff, so it was a good
Okay.
experience fighting down there.
Did they allow ground and pound? You didn't use it. It kind of got TKO'd before that, but I was curious.
Yes, they do. They do everything except elbows. I think I actually didn't know that you could do knees to the head until I got down there in the rules meeting, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you can do knees to the head." So
Wow.
I didn't even train those, but that would have been cool to know for training camp.
Yeah, I mean,
Next time, next time.
next time. Well, that actually brings up on this show. I brought it up a lot because people just assume MMA is what they see in the UFC, which is true if it's professional, but it's
Yes.
not true fully because of some of the other limitations. And Pennsylvania, as you know, you've been fighting under the novice amateur rules in Pennsylvania, and that is very handicapped to strikers. As you are well aware, it really limits strikers. So let's talk about that. Your last fight that you had in for 247 Fighting Championship, you got the decision win. It was a great fight. I loved calling it. It was great seeing you. But I remember she was very heavy on trying to grapple and trying to clinch, and obviously with limited strikes. What do you think how do you think more strikes helps you? Because obviously compare your fight for 247 in July of last year to the fight that you just had on your birthday, because it looked like the result was still a win, which is great, but a much faster win when you have a little bit more striking arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, you just have more access to more weapons, and it kind of changes how you train too. Like I didn't train any head kick stuff for that other fight just because I didn't want to like get in the moment and then forget that I'm not allowed to do head kicks, and then I'm just like, oh, sorry, you know. But it changes just how you train and like the combinations you can set up and different things you can do. And ground and pound is a huge thing too. That's a huge aspect of the game that like, I mean, you've got to train that to get good at it and to positionally know where you can do it and where you can't. So anytime you go to the ground under those novice rules, it's like you're doing jujitsu and shin guards at that point, and it's not that fun.
I guess the one thing to point out with the jiu-jitsu when it's in a very limited in Pennsylvania and amateur rules, to bring some people up to speed, you can land ground strikes, but only if they're below the clavicle. And it leads to what you probably are aware, but I always point this out because it changes the game. People on the ground end up doing this type position, which you never see in pro, because if you did this in pro, you'd be unconscious within seconds. And I do think and you're agreeing, I do think it leads unintentionally, because the Pennsylvania rule said it's just to keep people safe. I get that, but it unintentionally leads people to change the way they fight, because doing this doesn't make any sense unless you're in a very specific rule set. But I have seen the jiu-jitsu people that are very good at jiu-jitsu being thrown off a little bit by the shin guards, because there's certain moves, particularly triangles and arm bars, that they might feel more comfortable doing without shin guards, because the shin guards make it harder. So in a way that might balance it a little bit, but it's certainly tough. But getting back to it, you went out to Kentucky. What was it like being kind of so far away from home fighting wise?
I really liked it. Kind of. I didn't have as many people in the crowd there. I still had quite a few people that made the trip, which was cool. But it was, I don't know, it's just kind of like you're removed, I love fighting close to home, but it's like nobody's texting you, like asking you where to park when you're in the locker room. And like, it was just kind of nice it was like I was just out there with like my team, and I had a great experience cutting weight there too. I always pick my hotel rooms based on like hot tub availability. So I ended up finding one that was like a bed and breakfast, which ended up being haunted. That was cool. That was an accident. So next time I'll maybe check the records first.
Yeah.
But I really liked the rule sets, and it would be cool to be able to use elbows. I don't think you can do that anywhere except Virginia around here. But
Virginia's the one, and you obviously know it, but Virginia's the one in local, well, sort of local, that is their amateur rules are their pro rules, which is not, it's kind of strange that they say it that way, but yes, you're excited about that. Most people are like, what the heck is going on in Florida, in Virginia? But that is funny to kind of see the different rule sets. You just brought up how much of a relief it is in some ways to fight out of the area, because you don't have to deal with some of the fan questions, like you were saying, where to park. And I'm just going to relate you to a second to Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight MMA champ of all times, because when he fought, I don't know if you know his story, but when he fought and defended several years ago in Cleveland, which he's from Cleveland, he's a firefighter in Cleveland, but anyhow, he fought in Cleveland, and he was the main event defending his heavyweight UFC belt against Overeem. And anyhow, afterwards, he won first round knockout. But afterwards, he said he's never going to fight in his hometown again because of the amount of pressure of people asking him for tickets and people wanting all these different things that he doesn't have to deal with when he fights in Brazil, other places. So it does kind of make sense that you can just focus on fighting. And obviously a shout out to Premier MMA for being able to put on a show. How many fans were there? Or was it a closed fight?
It was 25% capacity. So I don't know how many that translates to in actual people in seats, but whatever 25% of that place was. And it was pretty big. The show was really well run. They did a great job. It was their first show back since COVID. So with all that, and I think they got they had a new commission guy to step into. So it was like all brand new, but they did great. So
yeah, congratulations to them. And they had 15 fights on the card, which is another thing that's so nice to see. I know Ryan Middleton can't wait to get 247 back, but Pennsylvania is different. They have different rules.
Yeah.
They have different limitations and different things. So obviously state by state. What did it, once you got the win, did it then dawn on you that you had kind of a very cool moment to get a win on your birthday? Or did it take a little bit longer to kind of realize not only did you get a win, your third MMA win, but you also have like sort of a lifetime achievement of getting a win on your birthday?
Yeah, I completely forgot it was my birthday most of the time. Like almost that whole week. People kept being like, "Oh, it's your birthday this weekend. What are you gonna do?" They like didn't know that I had stuff going on, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's my birthday. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know."
Sure.
But then the ring announcer he came up to interview me afterwards, and he's like, "And it's your birthday," and I was like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
So I kind of forgot until afterwards, and then it sank in after it was all over.
Yeah,
But
that's a pretty cool experience. It's something. And when we had you on the show before, you were talking about how cool training MMA has been for you. You're super educated. You got a great job. You're a pharmacist, and so you do the training for really for the love of it, which is the official word for. That's where we get the term amateur. It's for the love of, and that's why the Olympics were to be amateurs for the love of the sport. A little bit of history there, isn't that
oh
interesting?
yeah, I didn't know
Yeah, yeah.
that.
So you are doing it for the love of, and talk to me about that because you did a Facebook post a couple of days after your fight, and you're really talking about what training's like, and what the rewards are for training. So what is your theory on training, and how is it for you for training?
Um, so I guess everybody does this for a different reason. I started out, we've all got something that we do it for, but I started out doing it because I wanted to learn just like some self-defense stuff. I've had some situations come up in my past where that would have been nifty to know. And so I got into competing, and then I like I just loved it. So I just like started, it was really great for like my mental health. I struggle with depression sometimes. So it really helps with that. I mean, if I'm out of the gym for more than a couple of days, I get real sad about it. But I mean, a lot of people that have like mental health struggles really can relate to that, I think, as far as like jujitsu and martial arts goes. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons. And like I love my job too. I actually just got a new job, still as a pharmacist, but it just as a new place. But I love that job. It's a different passion that I have for martial arts.
Mhm.
So it's something that like if I go a couple days without doing it, I feel like I'm bummed about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I went. This is a good example. So I went on vacation with my parents this summer, and we went to shoot like around South Point in one of the Carolinas, wherever that
Okay.
is. Yeah. But I stayed down there, and I was like itching to do jujitsu somewhere. So I got a hold of the Brunson MMA down there. They let me come and train,
Oh
which was
yeah,
awesome.
Brunson. Yeah.
Yeah. I went down there and trained for and made some connections and went to a couple classes. And my parents were like, "Can't you just take a day off?" And I was like, "I don't want to take a day off. I love this. This is what I do every day because I like it." Like so I think that kind of sums it up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great summary. Derek Brunson, who's a UFC fighter, not only runs a gym, but and I forget the name of it, but he just recently, pre-COVID, started an MMA. I think it's called Battle at the Beach or something. It's right on
Yeah,
the
they're
beach.
still doing it.
Yeah.
I
Oh, they are
almost
still
fought
doing it.
there.
Yeah, because
Yep.
I've interviewed some fighters that flew down there or drove down there to fight for him, and so it's really exciting
Mhm.
that it's a tie-in to Derek Brunson. Um, but anyhow, getting back to what you said about really loving it and needing it is I am a licensed professional mental health counselor. That's my day job. And so when you mention the value of doing it, for mental health is in the business, we call anything that's done for the purpose of mental health a therapeutic lifestyle change. And the way we make that sound fun is we call it the TLCs, right? Just like tender loving
Oh,
care.
yeah.
So Counsel Luke tells people pretty much all day, every day, that we want to show ourselves TLCs, tender loving care. But in doing that, what's really healthy for people is to figure out what is a therapeutic lifestyle change. And obviously, physical fitness can be a huge part of that. There's a bunch of different things that can fall into that, but it's anything that you do that has a benefit to who you are or how you feel. And obviously, MMA is a big part of that. But I encourage, and that's where you get into things like art therapy or music therapy, or in this case, physical, like action art. you know, acting something out. And so I give everybody an encouragement that is trying to work on their mental health to recognize that it's very unlikely to fix or work on your mental health in a vacuum, right? If you were to just sit in a room and try to improve your mental health, it's really not going to happen. In fact, part of the counseling process, because you do just sit in a room and talk to a counselor, typically, traditionally, is something called behavioral activization, which is the idea that if counseling is going to be helpful, it has to kind of bring on or encourage some type of behavioral change, because without a therapeutic lifestyle change, it's probably not going to really, you can create change. But anyhow, so shout out to you and everybody else. And if you're listening to this and you're not really thinking that, you know, doing martial arts will be helpful to you, then find something that is. There's so many things that can be helpful. And obviously it's great that martial arts is helpful to you. Talk a little bit about, since you already mentioned going down to Derek Brunson's gym, talk a little bit about the community, which I think is a huge deal, whether it's in AA or NA, if anybody's dealing with addiction issues, you know, the anonymous groups are great. But one of the reasons why they're so helpful is because they give a sense of community. And I think gyms, training gyms, BJJ gives such sense of community. So what's that like for you, where you're training and just in the sport in general?
Yeah, I was gonna say I really do think that there's like a sense of community, not even just in my gym, but just in the entire, specifically jiu-jitsu community.
Mhm.
I mean, the MMA community in a broader term is also kind of like that. But for some reason, jiu-jitsu people, it's just like jiu-jitsu people are always so welcoming and so nice. I feel like if I go train striking somewhere else, there's always like a little bit of like somebody wants to be the alpha there. But in
Bravado.
jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a little bit more of that in striking for whatever reason. I mean, it just attracts that kind of person sometimes, but which is okay. That's fun too. But but as far as jiu-jitsu goes, I think that I don't know what it is about jiu-jitsu that just makes people have some kind of a common ground. Like I think it's really cool that I can go to a jiu-jitsu gym in well, I mean, like down there in Myrtle Beach and know no one and just feel completely at home. And I also think it's cool that like I don't know what any of those people do for a living. Like I have no clue, no idea. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like I mean, on the mat it's all the same, kind of, which is one of my favorite things about jujitsu, just anywhere.
It is. It really is. I think a lot of that, and you're right that there are certain styles of martial arts or types of martial arts that bring out certain types of people. As a coach, I've seen that the cross country runners, which I don't really run for fun, but the cross country runners, they tend to bring out people that are more cerebral, kind
Yeah,
of want to challenge
that's true.
themselves. And I think that that's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. I would call jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
sort of the cross country running, because you're really competing against yourself. Even though you're competing against a person, the concept is you're doing chess moves, and it's not, the whole concept of BJJ, as you know, is you don't have to be the bigger, stronger person. You can be more intellectual and more technically sound. So there's a lot out there. And I think the whole concept of jiu-jitsu, whether it's in person or even training videos on YouTube or whatever it happens to be, is they want people to learn. You know, it's really about trying to educate. So I think it's a beautiful environment. And I had a situation where I was running MMA gym in Philly for a couple of years, and I had a guy come in, and I don't think he's ever going to watch this, but he was a dentist, and we had no idea he was a dentist, you know, and he's rolling with this, doing stuff, and he was a dentist, and so we ended up calling him Dr. Z because he was a doctor. But it's just funny that, you know, in a gym like that, you lose even things like that. You lose even like the fact that somebody, and then we said it was good to have him in case sparring got a little bit too rough. You know, we always said, oh, it's nice to have a dentist around, but anyhow.
that's true.
So yeah, that's cool. Now recap, when did you start training? Because I know you're still training in the Morgantown area, or kind of what's your current training situation like, and what's it been like for you as a person training up till now?
So I started in, it'll be 5 years in April. That's crazy. I can't believe it's been 5 years, but yeah, it'll be 5 years in April. I started right before I graduated.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've been down at Ground Zero in Morgantown for most of that time. I've been making some trips up to spar in Pittsburgh lately, which has been fun. That's where my new job is based out of too. So I have had some excuses to go up there. But yeah, I can't believe that it's been 5 years, but in that time I've learned a lot of stuff. And our gym is just about to reopen fully, I think.
Mm.
we'll see. We've had a couple people who are in like a quarantine group, so some of those nights have been blocked off, but I think they're about to start opening classes up again. Sorry if we're not doing that yet, guys.
Yeah. If you're not officially doing it, you haven't heard it here, because when I was doing interviews for 247, their November fights, which ended up becoming closed completely and just video. Several people from the Gorilla House gym out there in Altoona, Pennsylvania, pointed out that they had done some underground training, when they were closed. So I know some of that stuff's going on, and I think it is a sign of how much people really love training, that it's not just competing, it's also training. According to Tapology, your first MMA fight was in 2018, so it's been 2.5 years. It might feel longer than that, it might feel shorter than that, but what's it like if you were to remember back to your first fight, which was a win for you? If you can remember back to that, like, how has everything been, like, nerve-wise and just experience-wise from there till now?
I still didn't get that nervous the first fight that I had.
Mhm.
And I think that just like being an athlete for a long time and having done like solo sports, like competing in gymnastics is not at all the same thing as this, but it is something where you go out there and you're under the lights and you're all by yourself. And,
Mhm.
I like did that when I was young, and I think that kind of helps.
Sure.
But I was a little bit more nervous. For this specific fight, I was more nervous to talk on the camera at the end than I was for the fight. I think I hate interviews at the end, stuff like that, because your adrenaline's all crazy. But yeah, I wasn't really nervous before this one, and before that first one, it's just like you don't know what to expect. So that's where the nerves come in. Is that like you've never really been in there, it's different than sparring, and you know that it's going to be different than sparring, but you don't have a concept of what that means yet. Like nobody has hit you in the face with the intention of like, oh, I'm gonna hurt this person because we're in a fight. Like we're fighting right now.
Yeah.
So I think that like after you get your first fight under your belt, you can at least go into it knowing what you're getting yourself into. And I think that will help with nerves. I actually had somebody that asked me, they were thinking about taking their first MMA fight, like, how did you get over your nerves for the first time? And I was like, well, you can do a few jiu-jitsu tournaments and that might help. Maybe I always tell people that that's a good idea if you get some jitters, but you're never gonna know what to expect until you do it one time. Just how it is. So I guess that's probably the difference.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it's also good advice because jiu-jitsu tournaments get people used to, particularly people from team sports. I've seen people that are in team sports, even basketball, which is like a very small team sport. They kind of don't know what it's like to beat an individual where it's literally just you and the opponent. And I do think, as much as gymnastics is different than MMA, clearly, I do think that the individual aspect of it, the fact that it's very technical, the fact that it's very pressure heavy, and the fact that you do a lot of waiting. I think people aren't always used to that a fight is only 6 minutes long in Pennsylvania. And so you do hours of waiting going into that, where I think in most team sports, you do a lot of, you're kind of out there. Like your basketball game can be an hour, a football game can be an hour, a volleyball game can be 50 minutes or whatever it is. And I think there's much more, you get into it and then go. Whereas gymnastics, the actual amount of time you're competing in gymnastics is just a couple minutes, but you're there all day. And I think that the mental game can really play a part of it, and I think that's something that's good. But overall advice, since you brought up advice, what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out training really in any of the martial arts? Would you say do martial arts in a certain order? And if so, what order would you say works best from your experience, or kind of advice to the newbies?
I mean, I guess everybody kind of has their own way to go about that. But the way that I did it, I came to the gym because I wanted to learn some Muay Thai, because I was like, oh, that looks cool. I like kicking stuff. That sounds fun. And then somebody talked me into staying for jiu-jitsu, and it turns out I was probably better at jiu-jitsu. But jiu-jitsu is frustrating to start out with. So I feel like the learning curve for jiu-jitsu is so much steeper at the beginning, because if you go into a striking class and you're halfway athletic, you can kind of look like you know what you're doing, sort of, as long as you just make the right movements and learn what a 1-2 is, But jiu-jitsu, I just remember thinking for the first like six months to today, what am I even doing? Like, So yeah, I was like 2 today, but I guess I would say just to stick with it, especially jujitsu, because once you figure out what you're doing, it's very rewarding. And I took about 2 months where I, like, after my first few classes, I didn't go back for a little bit until I got peer pressured by one of our black belts in the gym. Shout out to Sampy. And he was like, why aren't you coming back to jujitsu? So I sat at home and thought about it. And I was like, because I'm not good at it and it bothers me. So, which is not the right attitude to have. So I did. I was like, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to take my stupid gi and I'm going to go to jujitsu for 1 month. And if I still hate it at the end of 1 month, I won't ever go back. And now I've been doing it for 5 years. So.
Well, that's a great encouragement. That one of the things I think that actually we were talking about a little bit ago that brings out sort of that kindness in jiu-jitsu is I think there is a high level of humility in jiu-jitsu practice. And I'd certainly not say that that's not there in kickboxing or Muay Thai or boxing. I think it can be and should be. If you're in a gym, I think a lot of times bravado comes out and it's not about humility. It's about trying to beat up the other person, which in training can become problematic. But in jiu-jitsu, I really think it is about humility. I remember some jiu-jitsu gyms I've been in had the classic quote on the wall that said, a black belt is a white belt that's tapped out 10,000 times or whatever, that the concept, which I think jiu-jitsu does in a way that maybe others don't. Like you wouldn't say a champion is someone who got knocked out 1,000 times. You'd say,
Wouldn't say that, no.
no. But I think a part of jiu-jitsu is that it's really about overcoming. Like you're going to get choked out to stuff when you're a beginner, rear naked chokes, and you're gonna be like, well, they get me 100% of the time, but then eventually your defense goes up. It's a nice process to see with jiu-jitsu, and I think that's kind of a fun thing. So as we wrap up, and I know we're still in pandemic question marks, but what kind of is going forward? Obviously, you had this great win, first TKO win on your career. You're now 3-1 in your MMA career. It's pretty exciting stuff. But what's forward? What's coming forward for you?
I want to stay active this whole year. I've got I'd like to fight 3 times before the year's over. We'll see if that happens. That was my goal last year, and I got 4 scheduled, but none of them happened. So hopefully we can do that. If in between, I would like to do some jiu-jitsu tournaments. Yeah, I'm still a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, so I'm working on getting my purple belt maybe one day. So there are a few coming up. I know there's one in Cleveland on the 6th. I think that's next weekend. It's next weekend. Oh, that I might do. Yeah. And then there's some in like Frederick, Maryland, and some that are kind of close that I would like to do. I would like to do maybe a super fight in jiu-jitsu too if I can't get a fight scheduled. But yeah, I know Premier's having another show in April, so I don't know if they'd have somebody for me there, or if something else presents itself before then or around then. I'd like to fight probably in 2 or 3 months.
Well, it's always
Feel good.
pleasure.
I'm healthy, I didn't
Yeah.
really get hurt in that. So
I should have asked you, I guess, but it was like a 90-second fight, right? Minute and a half-ish.
yeah, a little bit over a minute and a half, I
A
think.
little bit over a minute and a half. So it's a good thing you didn't get injured in a minute and a half. And it did look like, because I got to watch the clip that you had put online, it did look like the referee did a good job of
I think you did a great job.
knowing the fact that there was ground and pound. I wasn't sure if there was. It looked like your opponent was saved from the damage that she didn't really need to take. So, and that's a good thing as far as that goes. And hopefully she's recovered, and it could be a steep learning curve, obviously. So
I talked to our coach, and she's fine.
Good.
She was back in the gym the next day. So that was cool.
And you know what? Yeah. And one of the things is you probably don't know the name Sean Santella, Shorty Rock out of, he's still, I think, the #1 ranked male flyweight in the world that's not in the UFC or in Bellator, one of those. And he's been on the show a couple times. But his very first pro fight, he broke his arm. And he was like, I think it was his first pro fight, might have been his amateur fight. I'd have to rewatch the interview with him. But anyhow, he was saying like that, most people that would have walked away at that point because it was like his first fight, but he was like, oh my goodness, let's do this more. So I do think it's a shout out to your opponent for, getting a loss, but still being like, hey, I still want to train, because it's really about the passion.
You can't teach that, man.
That you give into it. Absolutely. So thanks so much. We've loved having you on the show, and I hope to have you on the show in the future. Keep us up to date, and best wishes, a belated happy birthday to you. Congratulations on your big win. And I hope good things happen in 2021 for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.